New Mexico CannaCast. Everything New Mexico, everything cannabis. What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of the New Mexico CannaCast. I'm one of your hosts, Chad Lozano, and this is, well,
I'm Josh. Yeah, whatever which side we're on. I'm Josh McCurdy, guys, a host of your CannaCast, and we got a show for you today. I can't even tell you. I've been excited for 3 days and barely slept.
Yeah. Oh, man. And this show is actually near and dear to our heart. You know, New Mexico cannabis history is something that's actually not talked about a lot in the state, actually, because we've done a lot of things that are like a national first. And so a lot of really good things. And so we're going to mention that as we go on. But this is something that, you know, we are really excited about. However, we're even more excited because we have a special guest with us today, Valerie Hubbard, one of the OGs of the cannabis industry. Valerie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Valerie Hubbard. I think a lot of you know me. But anyway, I'm so happy to be on this show, and I'm so happy to be sharing what I know of the history of the cannabis bills in New Mexico.
Appreciate it. And you know what? She's being modest. You know, Valerie is actually, you know, pretty much one of the mothers of the cannabis, one of the cannabis programs that we had, the second one, and the bill and everything. And she's been fighting for a very long time, even out of the halfway house. So, you know, I'll let her explain that more as we go on in the history, because she'll get into it a little bit more. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump in because we got a lot to talk about today. There's actually
Can I say something real quick? Just real quick.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yes. I just like everybody to know Valerie is a living legend. And if you don't know her in the cannabis community, you're missing out. That's all I got to say. And this episode is going to be amazing. So definitely.
Cool. All right, guys. So we're going to jump in. We're going to start the timeline actually in 1915 in El Paso, Texas. This is where kind of everything kind of starts to take shape and kind of, you know, gets a little more momentum. So in 1915, an incident happened. Some crazed guy from Juarez, Mexico, you know, originally was in the city of El Paso, between the borders of the city. They used to kind of just be one thing. So he was in the area and he ended up attacking a couple of people. He attacked a cop, killed a couple of people. I think he attacked a horse. And I think he just had some kind of crazy episode going on. However, they try to blame it on marijuana because they said he was smoking the marijuana, and they call it Mexican opium, come to find out. And I thought it was opium that they said he was smoking, but when I reread it, they were calling it Mexican opium. And so they were trying to say that the marijuana is more deadly and it's, you know, crazy, intoxicant. That's the reason why he went crazy. Who knows the reason why? This guy just, you know, went on a rampage. You know, he went on a killing spree out in the streets, you know, Juarez, El Paso. So that really gave, you know, cannabis a really bad name. And this is actually where the word is really coined, marijuana, in a bad sense, especially when it, you know, you're talking about, you know, Latinos, Hispanics, and, you know, Black people and other people of color, even Filipinos were involved with that too as well. So this is actually where everything kind of takes place and starts happening. El Paso was actually the first city in the nation to make cannabis illegal, you know, the first city. So they did it. And of course, we're probably going to follow next, right? Yes. In 1923, New Mexico made it illegal for us to sell, possess, use anything with cannabis. So in 1923, that's when everything kind of went down, because, you know, there's a lot of lies going on, and you guys can study up the history if you don't know. You know, this is all about New Mexico, so we're going to try to keep it on track with that. So anyway, so nothing really goes on from 1920, you know, 23 on to 1978. You know, there's a few things, of course, talks, but nothing really, you know, noticeable or, you know, noteworthy until that time. So in 1978, we have a really good bill that comes through, and it's a medical cannabis bill. And also there's a couple of reasons why this bill passed, because we got medical cannabis in 1978. Heard that right. New Mexico was the first state in the nation to have a medical cannabis program all the way back in 1978. So sorry, California, we were first. In New Mexico, we kind of get overlooked by things a lot, and this is one of them. You know, because we were the first, and California likes to take, you know, all of the credit for it, but it was actually us. However, California did come in and they, you know, did it better than we did, you know, initially. It only lasted till like 1984. And so because of that, there was very limited amount of patients. I think Valerie said it was 250 patients, but you can elaborate a little bit more on the bill and why it came along and who really pioneered it.
Well, folks, I want to tell you about Lynn Pearson. In 1978, Lynn Pearson was a 26-year-old cancer patient who advocated for the passage of our first medical marijuana law. The bill was known as the Controlled Substances Therapeutic Act. Pearson died a few months after the bill was passed. He was really never able to partake in the cannabis medicine that he fought so long for. But 250 patients in New Mexico received cannabis through the program, which was run by the University of New Mexico until 1986, when funding was stopped.
So 1986, it finally just pretty much dissolved. It just ceased from existing. Then actually only a few years after that, California comes in, and they come in with their newer program, which who knows, they could have used us as a model of some sort, or even as a motivation to do that again. So props to California in that sense, but number one's over here in New Mexico. So shout out to Lynn Pearson. Also, he was actually one of the people who's named after the current medical cannabis program that New Mexico has today, and we'll actually talk about that more later on. So nothing really goes on after 1978, still the whole drug war thing, blah, blah, blah. We actually have Gary Johnson as a governor later on in the 90s. And actually in 1999, Gary Johnson endorses cannabis. And as being a governor and also a Republican governor, especially at that time, that was something that was just political suicide. A lot of people are like, oh my God, this guy's crazy, whatever. And, some of his antics a little weird. I actually got to interview him once, and, he's a very interesting guy. Josh got to meet him as well. And, he was a really cool guy, and, I could see why he really endorsed it. But, Valerie knows a little bit more about that. And also in 1999, Valerie, if you want to explain to the people, really what was going on around that time, go ahead, especially with DPA, yourself, go ahead.
Well, because of Gary Johnson and his outspoken, he gained a lot of national attention because his whole premise was legalizing all drugs, not just cannabis. He just wanted to see legalization of all drugs, ending the drug war, which is a policy that we all wanted to see happen at that time. So in 1999, the Drug Policy Alliance put a desk down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the preparations began to bring a new bill to the legislature, and that was going to be called the Lynn Pearson Compassionate Use Act. What I didn't go into, I think that is kind of interesting here, is that I had been in prison for growing cannabis, and when I got out of prison, I was in halfway house in Albuquerque, and the very new director in the year 2000 contacted me, and we started to go to once a week. We would go out and have a little chat up on New Mexico and what's going on here and who's who and that kind of stuff. And it was just a really phenomenal experience for me to get out of halfway house and have somebody incredibly brilliant to talk with. So it just turned out that when my 6-month mandatory halfway house was over, I moved to Santa Fe at the very same time that the Drug Policy Alliance moved to Santa Fe. So it just, Catherine and I continued our friendship, and I kind of became an official staffer, an unofficial staffer. I've had so many roles with Drug Policy Alliance, but it began in 2000, and in 2001, we ran, our preparations began to bring a bill to the legislature, the Lynn Pearson Compassionate Use Act, and 2001 and in 2002. The bill ran, and each time with more success. The atmosphere at the Roundhouse was a little tense as conservative legislators felt like they were being taken over by a band of hippies. And it kind of felt that way to us, that we're trying to learn our roles as citizen advocates and being amongst the legislative folks. But it gave us an opening, and we began education process with the lawmakers. And that was in 2002, we were able to pass restoration of felon voting rights back. So we got that through, ran it in 2001, passed it in 2002, and that was our first success bill that we had with Drug Policy Alliance.
And I mean, even, just after a year, you made a really big change in the state, about a year, you made a huge
Yeah.
change, not just in the state, the nation. Now, most states actually, adopted this and have used it, as just the law of the land now. And almost every state, I think, has that law.
Yes.
And we're probably going to go down and see a couple of more things like this that New Mexico did as a first. So far we have the medical cannabis program, and we also have, what Valerie just said right now with, with the people who have a felony and everything. So, so in 2001, 2002 is really when we first got our, first cannabis bills in the legislature. This is for medical, not rec yet. But, going down to 2003, we actually elected Bill Richardson as our governor. And now Bill Richardson actually wasn't the friendliest governor to cannabis at first, as people know him today. And Valerie knows, more than I do, how Bill Richardson was towards cannabis. So please, go ahead and explain.
Well, I can tell you that the newly elected governor was such a change after having Gary Johnson. And it was such a change, and he really wanted nothing to do with Governor Gary Johnson's past or his bills. So what he did is he wanted to distance himself to the from the issue entirely. And he invited the drug czar, John Walters, to come out and address the legislature, leaving the feeling that passing the cannabis bill would bring tanks into the streets and all federal funding to New Mexico would be stopped. That's how badly he wanted to distance himself from our bill. So we lost miserably in 2003. We ran the Lynn Pearson Compassionate Use Act, and we lost miserably. So that was 2003. In 2004, we had to sort of regroup. By this time, we had two directors, Catherine Huffman being our first director, and Antoinette Tejas-Humble being the second director. And with Antoinette, I was able to pass the restoration of felon voting rights with her. In 2003, she was a part of the bill whenever we lost miserably. And then DPA had to find a new director. We didn't run any bills in 2004. It was a short session. It was a time to regroup. There was a new state director at DPA, and we needed to assess our bill, our strategy, our friends, our foes, and look for courageous patients to come forward and give their stories. That was our next move for strategy going into the 2005 election. And in 2005, we were ready. We had a strong bill, a new sponsor, new patient champions, and new energy.
And one thing I really want to mention before we move on is all of this work since 1999, 2000 was nothing but women, guys. This is something that, I really wanted to highlight, is this was all done with nothing but women. And that's something that's not talked about anytime, anywhere. Even I found this out just, doing this show. Josh and I are both like, wait. You mean there was nothing but women doing this? That's amazing. Why isn't this talked about? And this is something that should be motivational to all the young girls out there, that you can do this and you can make a change. So,
absolutely.
So please, Valerie, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to say our new director in 2005 came on board in 2004 was Rena Sapansky. And Rena was an amazing director, as each of the directors had been, but we were moving into new territory, new fields. And in 2005, we were ready. I knew when I listened to the bill being heard in its first committee of 2005 that there was a different feeling about us, DPA and the bill. The committee members seemed to have a new awareness of compassion too. We passed the committee with a unanimous vote, and I walked out and felt a breath of fresh air lifting my spirit. We had actually three remarkable patient champions with us beginning in 2005. Essie Debonnet, Fred McDonald, and Aaron Armstrong. Fred was a former Navy SEAL and a paraplegic from an accident. Essie was a nurse who had suffered from HIV, and Erin was a young woman diagnosed with a rare thyroid cancer at age 17. Together, we covered the roundhouse. All three told their stories over and over and over to each and every legislature, working to win over hearts and minds to educate on compassionate use and what it meant not to be criminalized for using medicine. It was compelling. In 2005, the bill passed the Senate and passed the assigned House committees and was ready to be heard on the House floor with 9 days left in the session. The next few days were just awful. And then just a few minutes before the 2005 legislative session ended, Speaker Lujan put our bill up on the House board as though it was going to go up for a vote. It was a cruel joke. We ended 2005 with a House vote, without a House vote, and the bill was dead for another year. A deep depression and grief came over us as patients, advocates. We had so many questions. What went wrong? What could we have done better? Who were our allies? And who did we need to work with? 2006 came along, and it was a 30-day budget session only. In the short session years, the only way to get the cannabis bill or any social justice bill, but a cannabis bill, was to have have it on the governor's call. Governor Richardson announced a Meet the Constituents Day, and we would be allowed 5 minutes to plead our case for medical cannabis and why it should be on the call. 4 of us went to the roundhouse, and there were no patients with us, but unknown to us was a wonderful middle-aged woman who had also come to the roundhouse to plead her own case for medical cannabis, and she was ushered in with us. Governor Richardson knew her and asked, "What in the world are you doing here with this crew for marijuana?" She told the governor that both she and her husband suffered from glaucoma and that cannabis helped them. A couple of days later, Governor Richardson announced that he was putting the cannabis bill on his call. Well, it was on a 30-day session, and it was wild. Our patient stories had truly touched some of the legislatures, and now we had many people and their families who were being stricken with cancer and other serious ailments. So as legislators began to have their own family members be stricken with cancer and many other ailments, which are a part of our medical cannabis program, their hearts and their minds began to soften because they wanted to have be able to provide some sort of medicine for their own loved ones, just as we were educating them about this is what we do. Well, it was on. Let me say, oh yes, in 2006, we changed the name of the bill with a memorial that came out of the Senate, and the name change went to the Lynn and Erin Compassionate Use Act, which was at that point was adding Lynn Pearson and Erin Armstrong to the bill, as Erin was moving through both houses and all committees, telling her story along with us. So it was an act of honor in honor of our dear friend and tireless advocate, Erin Armstrong. When the bill got to Senate Judiciary and the Office of National Drug Control Policy, they had federal cops sent Dr. John Murray, the former deputy drug czar, flanked with uniformed police officers, district attorneys, the sheriff's lobby, and so forth. The media was there and the committee room was packed. Our 3 brave patients gave testimony and other advocates spoke up for the bill. Then Dr. Murray spoke. He asked that the good senator, which at that time was Senator Michael Sanchez, and he asked the good senator who he was head of judiciary, not to be fooled by what amounted to a dog and pony show put on by snake oil salesmen, our saleswomen, which was us. Senator Michael Sanchez told the law enforcers that year after year, the committee listens respectfully as law enforcement brings in crime victims to testify. And right now you are insulting the integrity of our citizens of New Mexico. So basically, it really was a bipartisan effect that basically told Dr. Murray to get on his horse or on his tractor and ride out of the state. Because we were moving on in spite of all of that fear that they were trying to instill with us. Senator Michael Sanchez got up and marched around the packed courtroom with his fist in the air, chanting, "States' rights, states' rights, states' rights." So a small group of us met with the Speaker of the House in chambers to see what we could do to compel him and educate him, but our efforts did no good. Speaker Lujan assigned us to the Agricultural Committee, knowing that would kill the bill. A small group of us, the Agricultural Committee room is small. It's very small, and it was packed. The ONDCP was back. The Deputy Drug Czar was back again. Media and our very courageous patients. Some of the most moving conversation came from one of the representatives there at the time. After they had voted down the bill, he cried as he told his committee members he was ashamed of them. Effectively, the bill was dead. But on the night before the session closed at 8:30 p.m., we managed to get our bill pulled out of the Agriculture Committee and onto the House Judiciary Committee, which was heard at 3 a.m. in the morning. We were back and ready for a full House floor vote on the last day. Well, the morning got filibustered until the noon bell, and we were not allowed a full floor vote. So that was the end of the 2006 session. So we decided in sort of preparing for 2007, pardon me, I have to just have a little bit of coffee here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, 2007, is actually a historical year because that's actually the year that we, were able to get a medical cannabis bill finally passed. And, I'm sure you could elaborate more on that.
Well, in the summer of 2006, my director, Rena Sapansky, and myself and our new head assistant in the office, we decided to go around the state and do listening posts. And let's see, what did I say? In the summer and fall, with our brave patients and a small group of advocates, we held medical marijuana forums in different parts of the state. We prepared for 2007, getting allies, patients, press, for everyone in every way to educate folks. And then it was that time again. I think we were the third bill to pass the Senate floor in 2007. The Linen and Compassionate Use Act was on its way. The turnouts for the committee's hearings were huge. But we were sentenced once again by Speaker Lujan by referring us to the Agriculture Committee. They had to hold a joint House Agriculture and House Judiciary Committee on the floor, as the crowds and the people that wanted to testify were ever growing. We moved to the House floor and we failed by one vote. A particular representative was out in the hallway and he came in and hit his bell buzzer for his vote 1 second after the vote was over. So it killed us. So Governor Richardson came to our aid. He was supportive in helping us get our bill attached to a mirror bill that was stuck on the Senate side. Now our bill had a different name. All knew it was our bill, the Linen and Compassionate Use Act. We had to go through it all again, all over. Go back through the Senate committees, go back through the House committees to get to the House floor. and today, Governor Richardson's support was key to passing the bill in 2007. Never forget our brave and courageous patients, Essie and Fred and Aaron. Essie and Fred are both dead now. Never forget that we brought the bill back from death at least once each session. Never forget our lobbyists and our legislators and our advocates who worked alongside with us to get this bill passed. So I am sure I've left out many people who were along the way that helped us get this through, but basically it was a very solid, small core of women leading the charge all through this 7 years.
Yeah. And and it kind of continued because once I got involved, it was still women. Like that's when I met you, Jess, and everybody else. It was all women. So yeah, I mean, we got medical cannabis passed 2007. Almost like a miracle. Because it seems that that's how things happen. It fails and then it gets picked up again for some reason. And a lot of people don't know, in New Mexico we have 30-day and 60-day sessions. And on the odd years, they are 60 days. And on the even years, they are 30 days. So this year, since we're on an even year, it's going to be a 30-day session. So that's what we're kind of walking into right now. So just keeping in mind in that, when we're going through these years, there's times where it's amazing that some of these pass because we're only working with 30 days. So the fact that, these three women just came in, and this was a different time. You guys have to remember, this was a total different time. The way that the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act was written was almost through paranoia, because the fact that we were dealing with a lot of federal intervention back then. The federal government was just coming down hard on us back then. And so the state was really afraid that we'd lose funding, people would get arrested, patients would get arrested, and they were getting harassed. And, Val, you know more than I do, how much, they were getting harassed and, how much threat it was.
Yes, I do. I wanted to say this is a very important point in the history of the cannabis bill. The med cannabis bill was almost our now governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, was at that time Secretary of State of the Department of Health, not Secretary of State, Secretary of the Department of Health. And she had been welcoming the program with open arms. And almost exactly 1 month to the day after the bill was signed, she left to pursue other ventures, and we were left on our own again. And Alfredo Vigil was appointed secretary, and he was no help at all in us getting this nascent program started at the Department of Health. And then we had a newly elected governor who ran on repealing the bill. So it never got easier. We actually had, from the time we passed the bill, almost from the moment we passed the bill, we had to struggle for at least another 10 years to sort of get to where the program should have been 10 years prior.
I agree 100%, because I remember when that change happened, it was like a sigh of relief, not just a sigh of relief, almost a cry of relief. Because, how strict it was and how crazy it was. Even when I joined, it was still a little strenuous, even with the VA, dealing with that, it was still kind of like, you could lose your benefits, this and that. And, so, it was still kind of a risk. So, 2007, we have that. 2008 comes, not too much. I think, was it 2009 we got the first producer, or was it 2008?
We actually had the first producer, only one, in 2008. And that license, they only stayed open for just a little over a year. And by the fall of 2009, we had the first 7. And we couldn't really say 8 because we had already, the first one had already stopped growing. So yeah, we had our first 7. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I did want to say though, too, in 2007, while we were going through what I just described to you, what 2007 was like, we also ran a bill called the Good Samaritan Act. And it took us 2 years running that bill, and we passed it, which is a harm reduction bill, which meant that in the face of an overdose, that folks could call the police in, They didn't have to drop somebody off out in front of a hospital. They didn't have to just walk out on them because of fear. They could call them in and the police could not arrest anybody there and in the face of an overdose. They had to just attend to the overdose victim. So that was a major first in the country, and it's now been replicated in almost every state, the Good Samaritan Bill.
And that's great. I mean, that's something that, New Mexico doesn't get any recognition for either, because
Right.
that's amazing. Because that's one reason why people don't want to go to the hospital when they're having an overdose or something, is because of the fact that they think they're going to get arrested. So, if it's just concrete in there that you're not, people are going to more often look for help, because that's what they need. They need help. They don't need jail. They just need help, and they want help. And if they're seeking it, they can get it without the, feeling like they're going to get arrested. So that's great. So moving on, we have a few more years to go through now. We're here about 2010. So 2010, I think you said Rena retires from DPA, and I think Emily got hired, but didn't come on until 2011.
Yes, Rena retired in 2010, and after a long search for a new director, Emily Kaltenbach was named as new director, and she didn't come on until almost mid-session of 2009. 2011. Emily Kaltenbach was our new director then. So this was now the fourth director that we had at Drug Policy Alliance.
And this is the current director, correct?
Yes, this is the current director now. And Emily came in, and it was quite a crux for the office, because there was almost a feeling that they were going to shut the office down, our executive director from New York. But Emily was the right director at the right time, and her mission and her decree and her directive was to get legalization on the board and get it passed. So we began that in some form of 2011. And also in 2011, we started a small task force, sort of so we could stay kind of in tune with what was going on all around us. So on this task force, we had 2 patients, 2 donors, 2 LMPPs at the time, 2 advocates. And I think that was about it. It was kind of a pretty small task force, but it was very effective. And so Emily just continued on trying to come up with some kind of legalization bill.
So she was pretty much just, following orders, essentially.
Yes.
Passed, allowed you and Jessica to really just deal with the medical program,
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, that happens sometimes. I mean, being in the Army, that was the case. You had orders to follow. So, I mean, I give her props for that, just staying on task and, being very on. And one thing I wanted to point out is, Valerie had mentioned New York, and we'll find out that New York and New Mexico actually have something really good in common, and you'll find out here soon. So 2011, we had the first task force. Was there a bill introduced in 2011?
No, in 2011, it was really just sort of a meet and greet and get her feet into the legislative pool, so to speak. And we did not really run any bills in 2011.
Okay. And so then I guess we'll just jump down to 2012. So 2012 is just where it's on. And this is just kind of where momentum's gained. You guys are ready. Now you have 3 women full time just working on this. You just pounding it out, not just medical, but, also recreational. And so, this continues the whole, the fight with the women that, it just is amazing in my book. And, and even when I came on, which is here soon, I noticed it, but I didn't really think it was something that was had been going on for a long time. I didn't realize it, had been going on for a lot longer. So 2012 goes, this is actually when Jessica comes online, right? Jessica
Halai came on as a new aide to Emily. Mm-hmm. And Jessica and I kind of had the task of sort of keeping our ear to the ground on the medical cannabis program and on patients. And I spent a lot of time testifying at the Department of Health um, hearings to try to keep the program on track, because it was so difficult under the years of political adversity that we were under with the different administrations. So
Yeah, because recently before we had elected Susana Martinez, and she ran on the whole premise of wanting to get rid of cannabis. She was a private prosecutor. When certain people asked her, if she could legalize it, she tells them, I'm a private prosecutor, and that's not really what I think as a governor. But so we really were at a stalemate with her for 8 years straight. The program just was at a stalemate. And 2012 was there, and then actually I think some alliance comes along. And then, we have Susana who's fighting against it at the same time, which doesn't help. And then 2013 kind of rolls around. We still have a little more momentum. And this is actually the year that Josh and I get involved as advocates. Josh and I actually got our cards like 2-3 days after each other. We actually didn't know each other at the time. But we found out like, dude, we got our cards like right after each other, because it says it on the card with your date you got it. And so this is the year that we get involved. I meet Jessica, she finds me. And then she invites me to the alliance stuff, and then she it takes me up to Santa Fe, and this is where I get introduced as an advocate, and I actually get trained, and I meet Valerie a few years after that. And I'll let Josh tell you guys how he got involved.
Yeah, I got involved real quick. I'll give you my 2 cents of story how I got an advocate. I joined to be a medical cannabis program, to be like to get a level of medical cannabis I needed. I did not find that. And then I got a letter saying you are going to have to go 187 miles somewhere else to find your medicine. And I couldn't get it in my hometown. Well, my grandmother was a patient. So the way I looked at it is, if they treat me this way, they would treat her this way, that was 79 years old. And I was like, this is crazy. This is for medicine. And so, yeah, started going to Albuquerque and meeting people in an old Cannabis Alliance, and met Val at the meeting. She gave me her gangster story. Valerie's a gangster, guys. I'm just gonna be honest with you, straight gangster. Yeah. So, anyways, gave me the gangster story. We happened to have some common ground in some places, and so here we are now, right? It's all good things. That's all I got.
Absolutely.
And so 2013, interesting year, a lot changes. And I just want to say the reason why Jess really found me and wanted me to help is because I was so vocal on veterans and cannabis and helping veterans with cannabis whatsoever. I lost my sister to prescription pills. She was a veteran too. And so that's one thing that, she really, saw that I was passionate about, and, still am to this day. So 2013 rolls along. Josh and I, we joined the fight with a bunch of other advocates, who have been here, for a very long time as well, not just us. And so 2014, pretty much the same thing. We have some bills introduced, they fail. Of course, history tells, we didn't legalize it until last year. So those bills fell. And however, the next year is the year of, we get how many more producers, Josh?
We get 12 more. We get 12 more producers. We had 23. Then in April is 35. All right. And this is where the fun term, the Dirty 30, got created. So nobody get upset or offended. It's just, that'll be how, us old school people that have been here a couple of years is going to refer to the guys that have been here, for the longest, the Dirty 30. So
it's the easiest way to put it, Dirty 30.
Don't be taking it personally. Might want to read the 4 Agreements book. That's all I'm saying.
We're from the Dirty South, so.
I would like to point out here, if I could, when the first 7 producers came on, they were only allowed 99 plants.
Yes.
That was still the to stay under DEA radar. And they paid $95,000 to grow 99 plants. I was just looking at some paperwork this morning from when we moved to 200 to 450. and it was like some years down the road before that happened, before I think with the last group of producers that we brought on in 2015 is when it raised to 450.
Yeah, it did actually. I remember that. And then finally, just a couple of years before legalization, they went to the mature plant count. And I guess I'll tell you a quick story about that once we get there, and how I made a mistake as an advocate. So in 2015, we have the Dirty 30. They arrive. They helped out a lot, guys. A lot of patients did get access because of these people came into the market. And so we got to thank them for there. So a lot of patients did get more access, especially in southern New Mexico, because we had like nothing. So 2016 comes around, and we're gaining even more momentum. More patients are joining the program. I was like patient 8,000 something. So was Josh. Valerie was probably one of the earliest patients that was in the state. I don't know if you remember your patient number.
No, but it was still, I didn't get my card until 2011. And so I was like in 2000, I was at patient number 2000 something at that time.
That makes sense. And so this is actually where this shirt comes from. So Jessica went on a trek all over the state to hear what people wanted when it comes to legalization, and what's your ideas of cannabis, and what have you been told, and this and that. She came with a bunch of fact sheets. People were putting sticky notes on the board, and I want to see this and this when it comes to legalization. And it was pretty much modeling the legalization bill that are to come in the year future. And actually, I got this shirt from helping her. She sent it to me as a thank you. And I just showed up, and it's one of the second or third time I'd met Valerie. And so we just kind of started getting to work together, getting this food out, kind of getting people set and everything. So it was really nice to see the support of the people in the community, especially here in Las Cruces, because that's where it was, where I was at when it was happening. And so here in Las Cruces, it was great to see just that overwhelming support. So 2016, of course, another bill was introduced, failed. Josh and I, we spent pretty much from 2013 till almost present day going to Santa Fe every year. COVID kind of changed that, but we'll get to that. So, that happened, so, all the bills failed, and, up until it didn't. So that's pretty much what you have to do. You just have to keep going until it doesn't. So 2017, it looks like we had another bill is introduced. Nothing really happened that year either. It was kind of a stale year. The bill failed. We did gain a lot more patients at this time. We're still gaining more and more patients. I think I remember we were at 70 to 60,000 patients at that time, because this is where Michelle Lujan Grisham is about to start running. Because I remember calling her and telling her that, there's probably going to be about 80,000 patients by the time she's elected, et cetera, et cetera. So 2017, that's all going down. And so then 2018 is where we actually have some huge momentum, and we have a huge change. And I'm sure Valerie is moving in her seat wanting to talk about this. So go ahead, Valerie.
Actually, I just felt like it was coming full circle with Governor Grisham, as we had cross tracks much earlier in the MedCan bill, and she had been so welcoming then. And I knew that her priority was to get legalization done in the state. And first off, she wanted to sort of shore up the medical program as best. So the 2018 was, I believe, the bill to shore up the medical program. You guys might remember that a little better.
Yeah, it failed though. I remember there were some aspects in it. Josh and I remember reading it, freaking for days. And yeah, there were some aspects I really didn't like about it, but it is what it is. But yeah, I remember it, and it failed. But yeah, this is actually the year that the S1EP5 was voted in, and that's actually the task force that helped create all the recommendations for the bill. I think it was SM406 or SB406 that changed the medical cannabis program for the better. Because until that point, we couldn't share cannabis together. We couldn't gift cannabis, in the manner of no monetary value being involved together. And you couldn't really, like grow for someone else, and not just someone, just give someone something from your grow. And you had to dispose in anything more than 8 ounces. And from then on, you could keep as much as you harvest. And so that made more sense. And so 2018, that happens. And, we finally have a governor who's cannabis friendly, very, very cannabis friendly, even to this day. She's, trying to help. So 2018, that goes, cannabis bill introduced, fails. 2019 comes around, and this is actually where we really get to work on the SM105. Josh and I were actually both on that together. And I actually worked on the consumption areas. That's how I actually know so much about consumption areas and why they're my baby. And one reason why I think it's kind of odd that, some cities are taking the approach, because consumption areas were essentially meant to be anywhere and everywhere. And they were meant for the military spouses, because a lot of them are actually patients, and they can't take their cannabis back on base or post, and they can't really do anything with it or consume it on base either. So if they live on base, they needed somewhere to consume it or save it. Also, the people who are in public housing and the people on the tribes, that was the huge one, because they're on federal land just as much as the military people. And so they didn't have any access either. So this is actually why the consumption areas and lounges came about. And then today, they're in the bill and everything. And now we have consumption areas where it's just everybody can enjoy it, which is great, because that's kind of along the lines of what we wanted, anywhere and everywhere. So 2019, we have the bill. A lot of good stuff came from that. Josh, he worked on a lot of stuff with it too. We spent a lot of time driving that year, and just trying to make sure that
every year, we drive 3 hours to spend an hour in a meeting and drive 3 hours back sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
It was, when you thinking about it now, and then, speaking about SM105, it brings me back because one of the tribes actually helped finance the money in the SM105 for us to be able to do that. And, and they just got, one of the tribes just got raided not too long ago on federal land, which is crazy. And I was just thinking about, these people really helped, push things forward too in that situation. So anyways.
Yeah. I mean, props to them, then they're big help with the cannabis community too. So 2019, that happens, and we get, the bill, it comes out, and then a lot of good stuff came out of it, and then, coming the prior year, actually micro businesses came from there too as well. I don't want to forget that, because that was a huge thing. We needed to add something. We needed something different because New Mexico isn't California, isn't Colorado, isn't New York, isn't Washington. We're something on our own. So we needed the micro business aspect too. So 2019, that's actually when we passed the medical changes, right, Val?
In 2019, we did pass the medical changes. And I also wanted to say there in the about the governor's task force is one thing that I pushed with that, just like you had consumption, I had home grows, and testified over and over and over to the fact that we are at any given year the poorest state in the union, and not every person in the state can afford to go into a dispensary and buy the medicine they need. So they should be allowed to grow in their yard or something like that. I think Josh and I had always been pushing it was called, we were calling it collectives at the time, but it came out to be micro businesses.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say too, because Drug Policy Alliance is based out of New York City. And so we were in very close contact. There were so few offices, drug policy offices in the country. And so we had a lot of sharing, caring, loving and hugging with the New York office. And so we were able to sort of take pieces of, I know we tried like Oregon legalization. We tried a little bit of that. We tried to add a little bit of Colorado's legalization, and nothing seemed to quite work, but we were also in very hostile times. So once we had a cannabis friendly governor is when we were able to finally push forward. And so that's all I wanted to say about the governor's task force.
And, it was a really good task force to be on too. It's really enlightening. I learned a lot, and some of the stuff, that information I shared today, I actually learned from that task force. So, there was a very sobering experience to meet so many people from the different parts of the program. But yeah, in 2019, the cannabis laws changed. We were able to share. Everyone was happy. You're able to keep your whole harvests. And, we're kind of with the thing that we are today, but something I'll share real quick, and a mistake that I made. I had suggested to the state that they should go to a mature plant count, because they're only allowing, the producers to have a total plant count of whatever. And I told them, I was like, the only really thing that you care about is the flowering plants and the end product. Why are you worried about the veg? And so at first, when they did it, they put a mature plant as a 12-inch plant. And so I didn't clarify with them what a mature plant was. And so they went with what they figured. So if you're talking to your representatives, make sure that you clarify with them what you really need. Because you could end up with that. I ended up screwing the entire industry over here in New Mexico for about a year, until I think they changed it the following year, when I was like, whoa, dude, I didn't mean that. So there's a little tip for you guys on the advocacy side. So 2019, a bunch of stuff happens. 2020 rolls around, and we all know the year of COVID. Everything is shut down. And pretty much today, we're going to be in virtual sessions, I think, this year for this year's session, because we're coming up here in a couple of days. So in 2020, we had the medical cannabis bill was in, the changes were there. We're like, yes, now everybody can focus on legalization, because we know that's coming. So 2020 comes, but we get a couple of funky bills. These bills actually had state-ran stores in them, and nothing within 25-mile radius of those. And it unfortunately came from the red team, from the red side, from the Republicans. And that bill failed terribly, because I even voiced negative responses against it. I hated that bill. And I don't know how Josh felt, but I wasn't really a fan of it, and I wasn't really wanting to go against it. And Val, you could probably explain a little bit more about it too.
Well, it's just whenever that sort of thing begins to happen, and the folks that had been fighting you all through the years decide all of a sudden that they're going to take on cannabis for themselves, then it just like throws our bill. It's like a curveball. It's like if you have X amount of votes for your bill, then that's going to divide up some votes. They're going to get a few here and a few there. And they were really not well thought. We had been working on our bill for so long and tweaking it constantly. And whenever we had the failures, I never considered them failures, because it's a chance to look back and tweak the information that you're taking in and find a better way of wording something to make it easier. You may be saying the same thing, but maybe they can hear it a little differently if you change up the wording. So every loss was an experience to gain from too.
And I like to tell people, if you're going to fail forward, keep failing forward. That's all you can do. And that's 2013 to, even present day, we're still failing forward, even if we did get, the bill passed. So 2020 happens, that bill fails terribly. Is almost like an FU to everybody, because of the way that it was structured. And, a few people were upset about it. So, and, it was a hard loss, like 2020 was a hard loss. I remember feeling it myself. But 2021 comes around, we have a fresh bushy tails. We're happy. We're like, all right, we think it's going to be this year. It's a 60-day session. There's 5 bills that were introduced from both sides of the aisle. They finally went down to one bill that finally went through. However, the bill actually didn't pass the first time around because we ran out of time. It was actually filibustered. I remember watching the whole session, and it was filibustered. And the buzzer ran out, and they had it on schedule, and it just didn't get read for the on the floor and everything. So Valerie knows a little bit more about that too, and how she felt as well, because I was pretty devastated after that happened.
Are we talking 2021 now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, actually, we did decide to sort of pull back a little bit, because the amount of time that was going to be left was going to be filibustered, and we knew that we didn't have a real way forward. So we were looking already at that point, moving towards a special session.
Yeah, and that's actually what ended up happening. Michelle and Grisham came in and said, no, this is our year. We're doing a special session, and went on our docket. And it was pretty much a cannabis special session. They banged it out. They got the justice reform portion on it in 2 separate bills, like Cervantes wanted. Senator Cervantes, if you guys don't know who he is, look him up. He's one of the representatives in the state, and who can be known as being a little tough, but to please. And they got through it. They passed it. The bill went through. It was signed by the governor by, I think April. And then in June of the 2021, the law went through. However, we go into this year of 2022, and we have adult sales coming online in 78 days. So at the time of this video, 78 days till sales start. And I'm excited about you guys, but that's pretty much all of New Mexico history from pretty much 1915-ish to 2022. And, there's more history being made every day.
Yes. I would like to say something though. We've been hearing the history from Val, and Val's been here the entire time pushing it through. She went through multiple administrators with DPA and everything else. If you haven't heard of her incredible story where she started and what she's doing now, I mean, it's fantastic. So I want everybody to take that. It's a battle. She went straight war. It was battle. There was nothing easy about it, as you can hear. Even when you thought it was going to be easy, it was straight battle. You need to really think about that we made legalization this far. And it's because of women like Val, and especially Val, I'll be straight. Yeah. That we're here. So, definitely always pay respect and understand, our OGs that put us here, and be very grateful that we have them to even know this, because it's huge. You know what I mean? We're coming into the green wave in New Mexico. And, I know we had a really rough medical program and everything, but my view is let's New Mexico, we were first in the medical. Let's be the first in quality in the entire nation. Let's work together as a community and crank out some fire out of New Mexico. Green chili would be the second thing they talk about because the cannabis is that good. Just my 2 cents at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the fall, they're not just smelling the roasted green chili, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's all I have. Valerie, do you have anything before we head out?
Actually, I wanted to say one other thing about an incredibly forward-thinking bill that we had, which was called Ban the Box. And that was one that's now been replicated all over the country, which was to take the felony box that had to be checked for felons coming out of prison so that they did not have to check that box. Now, that didn't mean that an employer couldn't speak to you about what your past would be, but at least you would. 78% is what we polled as went straight to the trash can if the felony box was checked. So at least it gave an opportunity for somebody to get in and present themselves and not just be tossed into the trash can. So
Yes.
that was another bill that came through drug policy too, and a lot of hard work. I got to testify on that one quite a bit.
Awesome. And Val's just been here the whole time, just championing for everyone. That's great, Val. And, just a straight gangster, straight OG of this whole program. And I really appreciate you joining us today on this, not just historical episode of the NMCannaCast, but a historical moment for New Mexico, because now we can get all this information collectively in one place. And so it's amazing. And let's hope to make history even more.
Indeed.
I agree.
Indeed. Grow New Mexico.
Yes, ma'am. And all right, guys. Well, that's everything we got today. And that's the show. Josh, you want to get us out of here?
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please share it. This is one of the greatest ones we'll probably have just because of the history, and we have a living legend with us. So, Josh from the NMCannaCast, everything New Mexico, everything cannabis, right to y'all. Mad love to the community, and let's make New Mexico grow that fire, everybody.